appreciate you coming on the podcast on the weight room. It's really cool to actually get you in here right now. Obviously, we were talking a little bit the show yesterday, and your athletes did pretty well, you said.
Yeah. We had 3 athletes, one in bikini, one in wellness, and another in bodybuilding classic. So it's a good showing turnout. So I have it all written down on my phone, but it's too many to really list as far as wins and.
Yeah.
But it was very successful. We had our client Shelby. It was her first show, and she was able to win her class in true novice actually, and she won an open, I believe, as well, a class as well. So nice. Usually you don't see that, first show out the gate, but right. Yeah, we're very proud of her. So
yeah. So overall, I didn't get to the show. I had a podcast actually yesterday as well. What was it? What was the overall feeling and vibes and turnout and all that kind of stuff like?
Well, for the Bluegrass Classic, it was the inaugural showing, Mm-hmm. It was a pretty good turnout, I would say. More than what you would expect for the first time of the show,
Yeah.
I think it was, ran very well. It wasn't that much chaos. I've been to shows where people were very chaotic because there's not that much direction or guidance. You have a lot of people. It's their first show. It was very well ran and planned. So it was successful as far as I'm concerned, and my athletes had a great time. So
yeah,
and
kind of like being the first inaugural show. What do you think? Did you see anything that was maybe like a little bit fresh, just because it was a new thing, or did they try anything to maybe differentiate between other shows in the past or anything like that, or was it just kind of like, let's get this first one underway and then maybe in the future they try something like that? Do you feel like?
That's a good question. It was a lot of the same faces, expediting the show and running the show. And those faces I speak very highly of, Jimmy Hornback and Monica being, the most familiar face to me. Mm-hmm. And they're just great judges. They're great people, and they run great shows, right? So by me seeing them involved, I knew it was going to be smooth. So it's like, yeah, maybe there wasn't so much of a nuance there, but it's almost a good thing because the shows locally in Louisville always run very smooth. And if you see them behind the judging table, it's going to be smooth. Yeah. So it's almost a good thing in this regard. So as far as what differentiated this show from past shows, I would just say the venue is relatively new. They just started using that, I believe, maybe last year. It's more of a theater type feel. And I personally like it. I know that last year they had some struggles with, when the people would come in to actually see the show and go to the booth to actually get checked in and, get their tickets. But this year it was flawless pretty much, So, yeah, all in all, I think it was a really good show. Great venue, great judging panel, great expediters, and it made our job as coaches trying to be backstage, getting our athletes together. It made it very seamless. So,
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of like how it is, the shows here locally do kind of run smoothly typically. Have you been to some shows where it's a little bit less maybe organized, or just it seems like things are all over the place?
Yes, I have. I grew up in this area, so I was spoiled, how shows are ran here. But even some national level shows, you'd be surprised how poorly managed and ran they are. And again, it's one of those things where, I have a theory that, you see a lot of people in our industry start businesses, but they don't have the business acumen. Yeah. And you see a lot of business people try to get into our industry, but they don't understand our industry. You very rarely have somebody who has both sides of that coin, right? And I feel like in this area, I feel like we're a powerhouse as far as bodybuilding. Everybody comes from the Midwest to compete in Louisville shows for that reason, because the level of competition is crazy. Not only that, but again, I feel like it's a template or a blueprint on how shows are supposed to be ran. Mm-hmm. And you don't really recognize that until you start competing outside of, Louisville, Kentucky. So like I said, even national level shows are not as not managed as well as, these Louisville shows.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And because you kind of grew up around here and have been a part of it, like where does that history, or where does where do you think it comes from?
I think with anything in life, the more time that you have, the more experience you gain, right? You learn from your mistakes. The Kentucky muscle was around when I was in high school. I'm pretty old now, so I'm 36 years old, So back in 2003, 2004, that was the prominent show even back then. So then years of having that, you know, and just perfecting that over the years, I think that has a lot to do with it. And then, you know, there was one point in time where I think there was pros as well that would come and compete. They offered that to qualify for the Olympia. So that kind of upped the stakes. And I think they knew at that point that, okay, we need to become even tighter as far as, you know, how we run the show, how we manage it, you know, how we handle the athletes. So just having that practice over the years and honing in and being able to identify what the mistakes were previously, and then, you know, try to implement changes to make sure that you're always continuously improving and becoming better as a promoter, as a judge, as whatever the case may be. So with that being said, I think, you know, just the longevity of it all had a lot to do with it to become the standard, I would say, for other shows. Because I'll tell you, I remember going to the Kentucky Muscle like way, way back. You're talking about, you know, 2004, 2005, and it was just incredible back then. And I just couldn't wait till maybe one day I could hopefully be able to grace that stage. So it's been around for a long time, and I think that it's standing the test of time because of time, ironically enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, 18, 19 years ago, for you, what got you into that arena in the first place? Like, where did bodybuilding start to pop up on the radar for you?
Oh man, that's a story. It's a story, but I vividly remember it. So I remember the summer of 2000. I was, you know, off school. Obviously, it was the summer, and my mom had a job that, you know, she worked in collections, but her and her boss were really close. So, you know, I could go to work with her if I wanted to. So I did that whole summer, right? So I would go to work with her and stay there. But, you know, I'm a kid, and I was like, you know, I wanted something to entertain myself. So this is telling my age again, but we would go to Walgreens because they had magazine stands, right? And I would beg my mom, like, let me go get a magazine before we go to work. And I remember just like browsing the magazines, and I saw The Rock. You know, I was a huge WWE back then fan. And The Rock was like my idol. Like, he was everything. Shirts, everything. The Volume 4, like, CD, walkout music, the whole deal. So I saw him on the cover, and I don't remember what I didn't, like, recognize what the cover said. I just knew The Rock was on it. So I begged my mom. She got it for me. Went back to her office, and I'm looking for him in this magazine. But on the way to looking for The Rock, I'm seeing all these ginormous men who look like the Hulk and superheroes. You know, I was always fascinated with muscles as a kid. I loved Incredible Hulk, Popeye, like my mom used to find the cans of spinach that had Popeye on it, so I would eat it. Like, I was always fascinated with muscles, so this was no different. So I'm looking, and I'm like trying to convince myself these are real people. I'm 12 years old, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, is this real? And I'm reading these articles, and then I'm seeing more and more. By the time I got to The Rock, I was not even worried about him. I was just like, this is incredible. So here I am, 98 pounds, you know, with my shoes and my clothes on. And I look at my mom. I was like, Mom, I think I want to be a bodybuilder. She's like, oh, you know, that's nice, you know. Yeah. And that's kind of where my journey started. Next steps from there was begging her for a subscription that she got. I still have these magazines to that day. I mean, they're as tall as me. And I still have my very first magazine that I ever got with The Rock on it. I still have that. And at that point in time, I really didn't think that I could become a bodybuilder necessarily. I was just enchanted by the world of it. And then I got the movie Pumping Iron with Arnold, you know, and then I every day I would watch that movie in the encyclopedia. I read it every single day, the Arnold Encyclopedia, and I just became immersed in it. And that was my introduction to bodybuilding. Year 2000, I was, 12 years old. So I was bitten by the bug all the way back then, years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. Were those magazines for you? Do you feel like that when you had those, it was like it was almost putting you into this place where you started to like see yourself becoming this person, or like this possible like future vision of yourself, just like reading the articles, looking through and seeing the pictures? And was it for you like kind of like just this ever building thing of like, I'm going to be this when I get older?
Absolutely not. So this predates the Gymshark era with the broccoli hair style and tripods where kids are super confident now. Before all that, I'm 98 pounds. I'm getting teased at school because here I am, like very skinny, not popular, socially awkward. And to add insult to injury, I'm reading magazines with men who were greased up and wearing thongs. You know what I mean? So it wasn't really a good time for me, right? At that point in time. But it was an escape for me, right? It was just something that I got intrigued by, like just, back then, Japanese manga was a thing. I was a Dragon Ball Z fan. To me, it was just as fictional as that, because it's like, I could never be this, but I'm intrigued by it. Gotcha. So what would happen is I'm reading my magazines in my homeroom, and I would get teased and taunted, and then I would come home crying, and that led to awakening something in me. Maybe not to pursue bodybuilding at the time, but it made me want to be bigger, made me want to be stronger. So I would literally beg my parents for a Bowflex. It's back in those days. You had little infomercials and stuff. They're like, we're not spending any money on that. You never stick with anything. So why would we do that? So I remember for that whole summer, I would go downstairs to my parents' basement, keep the lights off. And to me, that was setting the stage. I was making my environment. And to me, my environment was dark because I was in a dark place at that point in my life. So I would I wouldn't come out of that basement until I did 1,000 push-ups. I would do sets of 100, and then I would do sets of 20 or 75, then 50, then 25, until I got to 1,000 push-ups completed. After I did that, my parents had a very old school cast iron like bench swing set. Took the bench off, wrapped my hands, and I would do chin-ups. Same thing. I would do 500, but I would do sets of 25 until I got to 500. I did that every single day for that summer. Now, obviously, the science we know about overtraining and this and that, but back then it wasn't about that. It was about just callousing the mind and getting out of that way of thinking. Just trying to fight the kids at school in my own way. Yeah. Without physically fighting them. So that led to me building a crazy foundation. But to me, I was just the same me, and now I'm at my senior year, right? Completely transformed. It was like I had a maid coach when I didn't. Got contacts. I felt more confident because I was working out more. I started putting on size. I think I gained maybe 15, 20 pounds that summer. And then I went to my first gym, and I got discovered by a bodybuilding judge. And he was the one, he's like, son, you're going to do bodybuilding. Didn't know my name. That was the first thing that he said to me. And at the time, I didn't know there were teen divisions. I didn't know about, I'm just looking at the IFBB pros like Ronnie Coleman and all that. So I'm like, there's no way. And he's like, no, there's teen divisions. And he kind of took me under his wing and mentored me. And that's when I kind of conceived that, hey, I might be able to do this. So that was 2006. Wow. Yeah.
So just that slow, progressive kind of just one day really at a time of things clicking and things, this situation happened, so now I'm going to go down in the basement and do push-ups, or, something else happened. Now I'm going to do this and I'm going to pursue that. And it reminds me, actually, when you were talking about that, it reminds me of, I think it was either Bo Jackson or something, or who did like the 1,000 push-ups and sit-ups, and it was whatever, and ran against the train or whatever every day. Yeah.
Wow, that takes me back. Yeah, are you my age?
No, but I can't remember where I heard. I'm 28.
Oh, okay.
But I can't remember where I heard that. But I just remember hearing it somewhere.
That was many years ago. Yeah, I definitely remember that. And I did kind of try to, I had a couple of cousins that were big on calisthenics and things like that, and they kind of instilled that in me at an early age, because to this day I'm a very resourceful person. I was not always able to have what I wanted or what I needed, but I found out that that's more of a gift than anything, because even we'll talk about the equipment that you have here. I was telling you I was a musician, and I do videography as well for myself, for my YouTube channel. Well, I found out that if you don't have equipment that can accommodate you fully, it makes you exhaust all possibilities, become more creative to get done what you need to get done. And then slowly but surely, oh, I have a couple $100 here. Let me piece this together. Let me get this equipment. Let me do this. And then you master it. So you end up mastering something, and then you tack on a little bit more. You master that versus walking into a full-blown studio. You're overwhelmed. And you're not going to be, see what I mean? So it was the same way for fitness with me. You know, it was in that regard. So from 15 to 17, basically all I did was calisthenics. You know, my parents were going to invest in me, but when they saw how dedicated I was, and I always tell this story, I remember begging my parents for Bowflex, weight benches. They just, no, we're not getting that. And I remember that summer that I just basically killed myself in the basement by doing the push-ups and then the chin-ups and all that. By that Christmas, my dad's like, I want to show you something. Come with me. Walk downstairs. I had a universal gym. And for those of you who don't know what that is, like back in the day, it was like the all-in-one kind of machine where you had like the lat pull down, you had like a chest press, and you had like an attachment to make a preacher curl. Like you could literally do anything on it, right? Mm-hmm. And then he also got me a weight bench with plates and dumbbells. So it's like he invested in me because he saw that I invested myself. And my dad was really big on, he would teach you lessons, but not directly. And it was some of these lessons I'm just now starting to understand, but that was a big lesson back then, is you have to invest in yourself for anybody to take you seriously. If you don't invest in yourself, how can you expect anybody to invest in you, right? So again, I always say that bodybuilding changed my life and saved my life because we don't really talk about the applicable skills that bodybuilding teaches you. Resilience, dedication, desire, passion, like all these things are tangible to all aspects of your life. You become a better business person. You become a better career-driven person, depending on what you pick as a career. All these things and these skills line up because you're honing them over a long period of time. So that actually was the beginning of me becoming a man, because it caused me to have to be that way at an early age, making my meals, eating every 2.5 hours. You have to structure your life around that level of consistency. So time management is a big one. You know, being disciplined is a big one. All these are very key assets and skills that you need to be successful in life. So yeah, I mean, I went off on a tangent there, so I apologize. But yeah, we can recover from that.
No, I think that's a valuable point, though. And I never really thought about it, though, because there's so many people who get into the gym and they have like the gym anxiety, right? Because they're just getting into this thing. They've never done anything. Mm-hmm. They're getting into this environment. There's people around. They feel like really anxious, really awkward, really like people are looking at them, all that kind of stuff. But I kind of had a similar, background as well. Like I was talking about, I didn't have a ton of equipment. I never went to a gym before college. And but just doing push-ups, and then I had my brother actually bought like I think 2 or 3 dumbbells, and just having those. And then once I got into college, even though I'd never been into a gym before, I felt like, okay, I have a little foundation of what's going on. I kind of mastered some of those things that you were talking about, right? And I can actually kind of get now. I just putting the pieces together, it makes more sense now why people do have that gym anxiety for walking in for the first time, because they haven't mastered anything yet.
Yeah. One thing that I think we don't speak a lot about or enough about is mentality. And here's why I say that. My first experience at a gym would be terrifying to most people. I'm going to tell you why. That was back in the day before the Planet Fitnesses, before the commercial gyms. It was back where most gyms were occupied by bodybuilders and powerlifters, right? So I'm walking into this hardcore gym. It's my first gym, so I don't know like what a hardcore gym is. Only thing I know is like I'm a little intimidated. By this point, I've had my little universal gym, the machine in the basement. So I kind of have an idea, right? But I've never been in a public setting, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm walking in and I'm just absorbing the atmosphere. It's very grungy. It's very dark. It's very dirty, and it just makes you feel like you're in a dungeon. And I couldn't really describe the feeling other than I felt like this was amazing. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. So I remember the first thing I did is I got on a flat bench, and I had the barbell, like the flat bench barbell. I had like maybe like a 25 on each side. So I unracked it. The amount of pressure and weight, because the iron weights back then, these were old school weights. So the bar was probably 60 pounds instead of 45 pounds. And the actual plates, there's no way they were only 45 pounds, 25 pounds. So like it like almost caves in my chest, right? So I barely get it off of me. I get one rep finally. I rack it. I get up and I go on to like maybe doing flies. So I'm like, got my little 10-pound dumbbells doing flies. And I just remember like it was I was in like the natural lighting, and then all of a sudden it got dark. I'm like, what's happening right now? I look up, there's like 260-pound bodybuilders standing over me. Can't tell you what they said on this podcast to me, but I got up very quickly and went back to the barbell and put my weight up. So that was week 1. And I remember my mom picked me up that day. She's like, how was it? I'm like, it was amazing. But my point is, most kids, they I don't want to say most, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I feel like you can see people of today maybe being disenchanted from that experience and maybe, discouraged from that experience. But me, I already had a little bit of mental toughness by that point. My dad was prior service, and then me just being able to have the grit to be able to get down in the basement and do all those push-ups, and didn't really know it, but I was callous in my mind even at that early age. So by the time that happened, I was just like smiling, like when these men are yelling at me, because it's just like, oh my gosh, this is like how bodybuilders are. Like it was very like whimsical to me. And I know that sounds kind of weird and maybe off, maybe I am off, but to me that was so enticing, because at that point I was watching Ronnie Coleman videos, I was watching Branch Warren videos, and these are hardcore, like in your face type bodybuilders. Mm-hmm. So to me it was like meeting like a real NBA basketball player. So I was like very, very like excited about it. And I can even tell you the next week when I went back and did legs, I had a 45 on each side. And I remember I squatted maybe 3 to 4 reps at that time. Because let's just be honest, I didn't train legs back then. I couldn't, number one. And two, who wants to train legs, right? We always wanted big arms and whatnot. So my legs were very weak. So I remember like doing maybe 5 to 6 reps of 135. And I rack it. Same thing. There's like 2 bodybuilders standing behind me. Like, you're not going to squat in this gym again unless you go to depth. We don't let us catch you not going to depth in our gym. So start with the bar, get the form right, or get out this door. That's what they told me. But that's the gym that I grew up at. So that's all I knew. And then now, like, I still talk to a lot of these guys. They have the utmost respect for me, but I had to respect the craft first. Yeah. They were not going to let me come into their sport and disrespect it. They were not going to let me come into their gym and disrespect it. And that really had a lot to do with me becoming a man and me having an understanding about you have to give respect to get it. So all these lessons that I'm learning in my life and as I'm maturing, they all stem from this sport and bodybuilding. So
yeah, it seems like it was like their own dimension in a way, right? Like right. It was their own world, it was their own place, and they probably felt like they were kind of like, in some ways, I don't know if outcast is the right word, but outcast in a way in the rest of society, and this was their place where they set the rules, they set the standards. When somebody comes in, it's like, hey, you got to follow this because we're not going to kind of get overrun and be outcast here as well.
I've never thought about it in that perspective, but that's pretty accurate, yeah.
And also, like, the way you kind of mentioned earlier about looking through the magazines and, like, looking at the pictures and reading the articles, it kind of reminds me of somebody else, like, reading a comic book, right? Like a superhero comic book. And then when you see that these people, like, you're in this dimension, like this comic book dimension almost of this gym, and then these 2 people who, like, walk straight out of a comic book would come up to you, and regardless of what they would say, it seems like it would be like, oh my gosh, I'm now a part of this story. Did it feel like you were almost like living in your own comic book at that time, just becoming part of that?
It's never stopped feeling that way. It feels that way today. You know, when I see the kid in the gym who doesn't really say anything, but he's getting after it every single day, and I see him watching me, I'll go over and introduce myself and try to align myself with him because I see myself in him. And those are the people I try to give energy to. Those are the people I try to invest in because I know how that is, right? Everybody's different, right? But I will say that there's still a nucleus of kids who just honestly just love the purity of being in the gym and getting after it and getting that feeling where you have a pump and it's like skin splitting and they just love the essence of what this is. And you can see it. Like I have a client, his name is Brady, he's 16 years old, came to me when he was 15. And the same day that he signed up with me, the same day I saw him in the grocery store with his mom, met his mom and everything. So his mom's sitting there looking at the meal plan, trying to because he didn't know anything about cooking, about rice, about any of it. So I remember like later that day, he had a birthday. It was his birthday. He was about to turn 16 in a few weeks. And I remember his mom, or he called me, and his mom's in the background. He's like, hey, man, like, I just want to let you know, like, I'm going to stay on my plan. And then his mom's like, oh, absolutely. He's definitely staying on his plan. He's not getting off his plan. So he was really hardcore from the start. And I'm like, I'm going to be upset if you don't eat cake, right? It's your birthday. You're 16, right? So, but he just lives and breathes it. He doesn't really post. He always wears a hoodie in the gym. Yeah, you never know what he looks like. Only reason why I do is because I'm his coach. Kid looks incredible. I never looked like that when I was 16. Like it's hard to fathom how disciplined and just mentally strong this kid is. But I see so much of myself in him, and it really motivates me. So I say all that to say, I guess in my little realm or my story, if you will, some people will look at my story and say, you've arrived. But every time I see kids like him, I don't think that. I think that I feed off of him. He gives me motivation. He gives me energy to keep doing what I'm doing. So it's like, it's almost an exchange. It's like I've made it to a certain point, but I still draw energy from kids like him who really make me stop and take a step back on why I started this in the first place. Because it's easy to get caught up in accolades. Like, I missed my pro card by a few spots last national show, and I'm all upset, and I'm like, angry, all these whirlwind of emotions, a sense of entitlement. But then I'm like, your goal is to be a bodybuilder, period. And that's what I see when I see my client Brady. He makes me take a step back, look at what I fell in love with, and just enjoy the process more than the destination. And I think that there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, and do you think that there's a lot of people who, whether it be more now or maybe not more now, but do you think there's just a lot of people who want to achieve something and like utilize bodybuilding to like reach a certain point versus what you're kind of talking about, just enjoying it and loving it and being a bodybuilder and like the lifestyle of it?
Absolutely. You see it more now than ever. And I don't want to blame social media because social media is it's an inanimate object. It's no different than a pencil. You can harm somebody with a pencil. You could draw a beautiful picture with a pencil. But I do think that since we have so much access to everybody now, that a lot of these kids are seeing the Chris Bumsteads, they're seeing the Gymshark contracts, the Young LA contracts, they're seeing the Nick Walkers, and as soon as they get their gym membership, they say, I want to be an IFBB pro. They say, I want to be, a sponsored athlete. And that's their mission, right? For me, it was the opposite. It was like, I just love working out, man. Like, I don't expect anything to come from it. I just like being here. Like, I just like feeling the vibe of the gym and taking the pre-workout and, feeling like, whatever. So, like, the innocence in that, but the purity in that, I think is lost. So, to your point, yeah, I think the gears have shifted a little bit. And it's like, just enjoy the process. Because if you focus on the process and enjoy it, then it's just going to be icing on the cake if you get anything from it. But if you don't, you didn't expect to.
Yeah.
Only thing you can expect is putting your shoes on and going to have fun in the gym. That should be your expectation, at least for the first 4 or 5 years. And if you decide to go competitive, yeah, now you have to change your mission a little bit, because if you want to be competitive, you have to think competitively. But before that, you need to build a foundation, because you can't build on a faulty foundation. And another thing you can't do for something that is so rigorous as what we do, you cannot have a faulty why for what you're doing. Because if it's for girls, if it's for just popularity, if it's for more followers, you're not going to last long. You know, when you're 4 or 5 weeks out and you have almost zero carbs or whatever the case may be, and you still have to do an hour or 2 hours on a stair mill, you're not going to make it, you know? So your why has to be really strong. And literally the only thing I think about when I'm in that process and I'm on that stair mill is the little kid who had a dream and everybody doubted him. That's what I think about. And I try to take myself back to that little kid who was 98 pounds and being teased, right? So it's like, I think there's something to be said about a foundation, because regardless if your second and third and fourth story gets knocked down, you always have a foundation to rebuild. But if you don't, then what? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's tricky because obviously as bodybuilding is getting more attention on social media and there's like more opportunity out there for people to take advantage of like being a part of the sport or being successful in it, or just having a good physique in general, you know, that's like a positive, right? It's a good that there's more opportunity out there. But at the same time, I think as like it does get more mainstream, I don't want to say it's definitely mainstream, but more mainstream, you see more of like the business aspects pop up. And like you said, I've actually talked about it quite a bit on the podcast, is like when you get that business aspect involved, you're getting the money involved. Are you then losing some of the, like you said, the purity or the innocence or the love of it? Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. Or what point even does that hinder someone's like capacity to be the best that they can?
Absolutely. So I'm going to answer this in two ways. The first way, I'm going to answer it from a high level in regards to somebody in Nick Walker's caliber. So in his case, and I'm not going to speak on him like I know him, but that's the reason why you need to have other things in life, right? I always say bodybuilding is what I do. It's not who I am. Because once you let that define who you are as a person, then that's when you start falling out of love with it, because you feel like there's so much on the line, there's so much pressure, so much stress. And then what do? We want more of a dopamine hit. So then we start posting pictures. Oh, I got 100 yesterday. Why'd I only get 60 or 70? Am I falling off? Am I not good enough? And so you start to lose yourself. So then like you try to go work harder and you overtrain. You might tear something. Now you're really out. Now you really can't do something. Now you're depressed. So it's like, I feel like you need to have other things in your life to kind of balance you out a little bit. And even if you're at that top caliber as far as money, now you have money on the line, you got to diversify a little bit, right? Where are you putting your investments at? Whether it be real estate, dividend stocks, whatever the case may be. You know, you take people like Jay Cutler. With his show money, when he won a show, he would take that money and buy a property because he was already getting almost $1 million in contracts, right, from his sponsors. So his show money, he would just buy properties with it, which was smart. He's doing this early in his life. So then when it got to when he's in his peak, he didn't have to be there. So he could really focus on just doing it for the joy and for the love, right? And then if you put passion in something that you're doing, you're going to have a good product. You're going to have a good service because you're genuinely loving what you're doing. So that's the first part I'm going to answer. The second part, I'm going to use myself. I'm going through what you're describing right now. The past however 10, 15 training sessions have been terrible for me. I just don't feel the connection anymore. I just don't feel, this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, I just don't feel like that vigor that I once had when I was a kid. This is the first time in 22, 23 years that I felt this way. I'm hoping that maybe it's just a phase, but I don't know at this point. And it's like now that I'm getting older, 40's around the corner is looming. I have kids. I have a teenage daughter. that I'm trying to establish and build a relationship with because, you know, we haven't been connected for a lot of years. So it's like, what's the opportunity cost for me striving for this pro card? You know, is it a childhood dream for me to get it? That's fine, right? But at the cost of what? And now that is my heart in it now? You know, so it's like, I'm kind of like, it's crazy that you asked that question because now, ironically enough, I'm actually living through that right now. You know, I went to the show yesterday, saw my clients do well, and saw my coach get on stage, and it kind of sparked something in me. But having a spark versus being disciplined and dedicated is two different things, right? This is not a sport where you can be motivated to do it. You have to be dedicated to do it, right? That's something different. And it's like, right now, I don't feel like I have that killer instinct. And that's what made me who I am in all aspects of my life, in business, in my career, and in bodybuilding. Because I was always the kid who had a chip on his shoulder, had something to prove. Now I don't have that killer instinct. So it's like, what's next now? Should I stay or should I go? You know, so I'm living through that process as we speak.
And do you feel like that's where you have thought or maybe are thinking like, this is where I need to take a break or maybe do something and shift your focus?
That's a good question. I'm still searching for a definitive answer, but what I will tell you is this. I'm in my prime right now. You know, I'm 36 years old. I have the muscle maturity. My body's growing leaps and bounds. You know, me and my coach agreed after my last showing in Classic Physique to pursue bodybuilding because my body, I was always in a competitive season, and I would go through a competitive season, and then my off season, I would just eat 1 or 2 meals a day, junk food, and I would like kind of lose a little bit of size and kind of get just chubby a little bit and kind of just, you know, I was still trained, but I didn't take it seriously in the off season like I probably should have. And then when it was time to compete again, boom, locked in, good. I would like grow into a show, and then I would always do well. Like I've never lost my class. I've had 3 or 4 national level showings. Two of those showings were first call outs. You know, the last one I missed by like 4 places, my pro card. Like, so I've done very well, but it's like, this is the first time that I've done a productive off season on plan, and maybe 4 or 5 weeks after my show, I gained 25 pounds. My abs are still there. Like my body wanted to grow. And it's like, when I hear the word break, take a break, it's just like, you have so much momentum right now. Like my body is clicking on all cylinders. Like, it's like, do I really want to do that? It's like, do I really want to do that? I'm not 25 either. So it's like, you hit your peak, and then after your peak, you start to do this. And, you know, I'm not an old man by any means, but in the realm of bodybuilding, not everybody can be a Dexter Jackson. So it's like, realistically, how much time do I have left? So it's like, maybe I should optimize and try to capitalize off the time that I do have left, as well as me being in my prime. So that's kind of the thought process. So it's a daily struggle, man. I'm going to be honest with you. Some days I'm just like, we're doing a show next year. We're doing bodybuilding. And then other days I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. You know, I really don't. So it's a mental struggle I'm trying to currently work through. And I think everybody tries to tell you the best side of them. They always try to tell people when things are going right. I'm a proponent in the opposite. Like when I have my YouTube channel and I vlog all the time, I'm very transparent about what I have going on in my life, because it's not about, again, the destination as much as it is the journey and how you make it through that. Because I believe that you should not go through something, you should grow through something. So that's what I'm trying to do now, is grow through this process and figure out what my next step is.
Going back in time a little bit, we got off on some very great tangents, but yeah. At what point when you were in that gym and you're starting to work out in that environment, at what point did you really start to think about yourself becoming a bodybuilder? I think you mentioned that the first time somebody walked up to you and the first thing they said was, you're going to be a bodybuilder, or something along those lines of, have you ever thought about competing or whatever? But did you start to think of yourself as that even before that? Or even did you start when that person did say that to you, did you start to feel like that at all? Like, okay, I can be this thing, or this is what I'm going to become?
I thought he was delusional. I'm like, bro, you're delusional. There's no way. Like, you know, because in my mind, I just didn't see it. And for me, I have to see it to be able to believe it. That's just who I am, you know? So here's what happened. He ended up training me or coaching me. And I worked at a gym that was just built. There's a new gym in my hometown in New Albany. And I was working the front desk. The guy, he's a preacher, by the way. I'm not going to say his name. He's a preacher. So just remember that. So I'm like maybe 5 weeks out, and there's another bodybuilder works there. I looked up to this guy. He was one of the premier bodybuilders in the area at the time, and, you know, we became pretty close, kind of like a mentor to me. And I remember him looking at me, he's like, Larry, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you're going to be ready. Like, my soul, like, just, like, erupted. Like, it was terrible. Like, I was just like, oh, my gosh. So what happened was the show came, and I didn't go. So then the judge went. He wasn't judging that show, obviously, but he had just retired, actually, from judging. And I remember he came in that day, like the Monday after the show. And the things that he said to me, you probably shouldn't say as a preacher, but he was just trying to get my attention. He's like, the guy who told you that has never won anything. And then ironically enough, the guy who told me I wasn't ready came in after the judge did, and he's like, I don't want to blow your head up or anything, but you probably would have won that show. So here's what happened. That was when I was 18. I went through a series of preps where I would prep for a show, and then when it 6-week mark came, I would just pull out. Like, I'm not ready. I did that all the way up until I was 27. And that's when I was like, look, I don't want to look back and wonder what would have happened if I would have competed. I forced myself to do the 2014 Kentucky Muscle. And at the time I was natural. So I'm like, look, man, like, you've been training for plus amount of years. Just go up there and have fun. I don't care about trophies. I don't care about accolades. I don't care about anything. Just go up there and have fun, and I did that. Went up as a bantamweight, 143 pounds. I won the bantamweight class. I won the lightweight class. I won lightweight open as well. And then that is when I was like, I'm a bodybuilder. I can do this. So all the way from 15 to 27, I never thought I could be a bodybuilder.
Even stepping on the stage, do you feel like at that point you still weren't convinced until you kind of got that validation of the victory?
That's a good question. The question is no. I'm a pretty confident person now, but growing up I never was. I was the polar opposite. When I was nervous backstage. When I stepped on that stage, the level of confidence I had, I've never had in any other scenario in my entire life. It just felt like a sense of home. It felt like, this is where I'm supposed to be. It's hard. It's very hard to describe. It's almost indescribable. It's taken me probably this amount of years to be able to describe this to you, but I just felt a sense of home and a sense of just, I got this. This is me. Like, I'm him. Like, in this point in time, in this little frame in time, like, this is what I am meant to do. I'm fulfilling my purpose. And ever since then, that's how I feel when I get on stage. So it's like, that's when maybe I didn't think of it in that immediate moment that I'm a bodybuilder, but I just felt that sense of home. But when I got the trophy and I got the rewards and the awards, that's what solidified that thought. And I'm like, okay, cool, we're here now. I'm a bodybuilder. This is what I'm meant to do. Because just as much as I do, like, it's very genetically driven. And I was a skinny kid all my life, right? And I mean, I was 143 pounds there too, but the shape and everything. And it was not just that, but it was the reception that I got from people I really looked up to and admired, them coming to me as soon as I got off stage. Rob Conway is one of them. He's really prominent in the area back in the day in bodybuilding, Ohio Valley Wrestling. He was very big. He even made it to the WWE. So he was sitting the front row when I was on stage. When I got off, he went and grabbed me, and I sat with him, and he just talked to me for like maybe 25, 30 minutes. And I just remember like having tears in my eyes, like, I can't believe I just did this. You know what I mean? And it was just like the innocence and the purity again. Because it's interesting for me, the more success I get, the more humble I get. Because you would think it'd be the opposite way around. And I'm still trying to psychoanalyze that. But I remember at that point in time, I was like, wow, like this is incredible. But to answer your question, that was when I feel like I had arrived. I could say that I'm actually a competitive bodybuilder.
Yeah. I wonder if it comes from like knowing that what it takes to do what you did and knowing what it takes to achieve even more. When you got off stage and you get back into the gym, what did that do for you? Did you kind of like keep that confidence level up, and did you start to feel more like, okay, now I can, really start to see myself as this thing, so I can maybe take this into an even more powerful direction, or what really happened to your mindset after you come off the stage and get back into kind of the flow of things?
Well, that particular show, you heard of rebounding, right? I had a friend helping me, but I kind of, between him and, myself, kind of coached myself. So I basically ate fish and rice every single meal, 6 meals a day. And I did 2 hours on a stair climber. I didn't know any better. So no cheat meals, none of that, right? I was shredded. But when I got off stage, I just wanted to eat and eat and eat and eat. I didn't know about rebounding. I didn't know about reverse dieting. I didn't know about any of that, right? So I literally turned into a whale in a matter of, 48 hours. Cankles and all, pull my socks off, the indenture, the whole 9 yards, right? I had a photo shoot booked, right? So I show up to the photo shoot and I just look ridiculous. Like the guy who's like shooting me was in better shape than me, and he's like a regular chubby dude. And he's just like, what am I doing here? It was bad, right? So to answer your question, wasn't a triumphant like post show. It was more like, okay, like this is not good. Like I need to figure this out. So I can't ever do this again in life. So that was a lesson learned more than anything. That's kind of been the trend of my life. I've had a lot of lackluster triumphs, if you will, in my life. Some of the worst things in my life has happened to me while I've been in prep. You name it. Losing my job, losing my car, losing my apartment. Still staying on prep though. I've my mom being diagnosed with cancer. Like just all these things have happened in my life. So if anything was to give me a sense of humility, it's literally being in that prep application and having the craziest things happen to me that has humbled me, right? And it's like I have to make peace with there's a different plan for me. I've trained my butt off for years. And like you said, there's been people who have out the gate, like, I'm working, here and I think I want to do bodybuilding. They turn pro. It's like, so it's hard to see that, right? But at the same time, a lot of people's like, why aren't you pro yet? Like everybody who knows me is like, they were always expecting me to be pro by now. And it's like, I keep on seeing my friends get it. And it's very disheartening, but now I've made peace with it. Now I'm just kind of like, maybe that's not my path. Maybe it is. Who knows? Even if it is, even if it's not, that's fine, but I'm not going to let it define my future or how I think about things in the present. Because one thing I always tell my athletes, and I need to tell myself this as well, be present in the moment because you never get this time back. Like when you're on stage for your first appearance, Shelby yesterday, I looked her in her eye and I said, have fun. Be present. Because it will go by so quick. And then you're always on to the next and thinking about the next. And I think we as people in general, we're not present in the moments that we go through in life. And I think there's something to be said there.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that. And I was thinking about that same thing the last couple of days. Somebody said, the summer went by so fast. And I got to thinking like, well, how does that happen though? Because it's something that we're all like, most of us like look forward to summer. It's like a little bit of you get your vacation or you get to do different things or, hang out with people, whatever, just different summer things. And it's like, oh, we're looking forward to that. But winter seems to go by like it just sloth speed, right? And I think it's because what you just said, we look forward to something so much that we get into the habit of looking forward. So then even when we get in that moment that we've been looking forward to, we don't know how to be there. We don't know how to just like take it in and slow it down And before you know it, the thing that we've looked forward to so much is gone again, and we're just sitting there thinking, where did it go? What happened?
I agree 1,000%. And I can tell you, I don't know how it is for you, but, you know, when I was younger, I felt like the school year went by super slow.
Yeah.
Like I felt like it just took forever. Like I'm thinking about like events that happened in like my senior or my junior year, and it felt like it was 5 years. Like from freshman, just think about it. From freshman year to senior year, that felt like a lifetime, right?
Yeah,
but it's like now 4 years is just boom.
Yeah.
Like, so I think the older that you get, the faster time goes by, right? Because I think your level of patience increases, but also you're so busy with different things. You're so preoccupied. Our mind's on so many other things, and that we look up and time is gone. So it's like now it's like as you get older, you're trying to almost buy back time. Yeah. When you're younger, you want time to go by faster. So it's the irony of it all, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like it's a mental exercise. It's kind of crazy.
Maybe that's where a lot of our anxiety comes from too. It's just also, you know, thinking about the future so much.
Well, I think that it's partially due to a misguided understanding of what happiness is. And you'll hear me a lot referring back to when I was a kid, because I think that your thought process is as pure as it's going to be. Because I'm talking about when I'm like 10 or 11, because I'm not really worried about what people think of me. I'm not really worried about being judged or anything like that. So I'm very pure, right? So it's like, what made me happy when I was a kid? And then I apply that to my life now. And what I came up with is the unit of measurement of happiness to me is smiles and laughs. And here's why I say that. Life is going to hit you one way or another. You're going to have good times, peaks and valleys. But you can be in the most depressive state and have a conversation with a friend or see something on TV and you laugh. In that moment when you laugh, even if it's for 3 seconds, you're not thinking about what you're depressed about. You're not thinking about your job. You're not thinking about any trials or tribulations. You're laughing. So it's like, that's kind of the unit of measurement to happiness, right? Because when you're in that realm, you're not thinking about anything except that specific thing that's bringing you that joy. So it's like, how do you increase that? And then my other theory is having those moments with people you care about. And that for me is what gets me out of bed every morning as far as trying to be financially free. I know we're going off on a tangent, but I'm done. So that is kind of how I measure that. But I feel like that's what life is about to a degree.
Yeah. And I think bodybuilding is a great way to put all those things also kind of like into a balance and into a perspective too, though, right? Because you have like different seasons, literally, like, you know, you're prepping this season, you're competing for this short period of time, you're maybe having an off season, it kind of recycles, and in being able to be like, I know, especially when you kind of have done it for a while, I know what this is going to be like. So I know things are going to be kind of rough for me for this reason in this season, but I'm still going to go through it. And so there's really no point in being. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout, because it's a choice. You know, everything really in life is a choice, but especially in bodybuilding, you've chosen to do this. So why be all upset and all angry and all frustrated and all that kind of stuff just because I'm in a prep and I know things are going to get hard? So I think it's just like, it's such a cool reflection of life in that way. But you did mention something that you're going through all of these things in your bodybuilding career, and you're kind of like telling your clients, hey, this is maybe something to expect here. I've gone through this. I've had this emotion in this situation. And you're kind of utilizing your experiences for your clients. Is that something that you have started to maybe think of more as your true role and your true kind of direction? Is that you've had these experiences that may have been in the moment unfulfilling or challenging, but that's why you had them, is now because you are helping other people?
I have thought about that. Actually had a good conversation with my best friend about it, and he's just like, you know, what's next for you after bodybuilding? And it's like, he's a very brutally honest person. He's one of those friends that you need to have. Almost sometimes he'll say some things you don't want to hear, type of thing. But that's why I love him, right? But that kind of sparked a conversation, and he said the same thing to me. He's like, maybe this is your purpose. Maybe this is the reason why you went through so many ups and downs in bodybuilding, to have perspective, to be able to cultivate the next generation of bodybuilders. And I was like, you could be right, because I think that part of what makes me a pretty good coach is not just the X's and O's, but it's about the mentorship. Because I feel like that's something that's you don't see a lot of, it's just, here's your plan, check in with me next week type of deal. And that's not really how I get down with my clients, because I understand the mental aspect of it, because I've been there. Right. And when I'm backstage with my clients and stuff, it's like yesterday, I make sure to literally make them calm down. They know what to do for the most part. We've talked about it. We've went through it. We've game planned. But I literally put my hands on their shoulder and looked them in their eye. I'm like, calm down and just be present in the moment. And I look at them and I'm like, have fun. Because you could just see the chaos. You could see just how frantic they are. You could see it in their face. And I'm like, the work is done. Like, now go out and just share with the audience your passion. That's essentially what you're doing. So it's like, that's the only thing you're doing right now. So just go out there and have fun and be present in the moment, right? And I say this, and I'm so adamant about saying it, because I didn't have that for myself when I was younger, right? So to your point, it could be. And I'm starting to go with the flow and not force things, as far as my career path when it comes to bodybuilding or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, if life takes me through that path of coaching, then I'll pursue it.
Yeah. And to the point where you're talking about, like, you've done the work and now just go out and show people your passion. I think one of the most interesting things that I've heard, or most kind of like eye-opening and relatable to so much more, is I was talking to an Olympian, and they were like, I think they're getting ready for the Masters Olympia, I think is what they're doing. And they were like, this is my party week. We were talking like the week before they were leaving for Romania, and they're like, this is my party week. And she was like, I've already put in all the work. I've already done hours of cardio and days of meal prepping and eating and weeks of this, that, and the other. And so at this point, I'm not going to let a small, whether it be within like bodybuilding itself or a small thing within my life, ruin this journey. And she was like, too many competitors rely on the result of the competition to tell them if they should be happy about what just happened for the last 16 weeks or 20 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever, instead of being like, wow, I just accomplished all of this. I did all of this, which I never thought was possible potentially for a lot of people. But if they don't get that first place, it's like it was a waste of time, or it was, now I'm sad, or now, of course everyone's going to be a little bit upset about not getting what they want to achieve in the moment. But like, if you can look back and say that was a success because I did something amazing versus that wasn't a success because I didn't get first place, then I think you'd be a lot more fulfilled with that experience in general, and you can be able to take a lot more away from that experience in general. But to me, that was one of the most like eye-opening things, and I think you kind of have been talking about a little bit too, the journey versus the destination, and it has to be the journey, because you can't always control what that end point, what that destination, or what that final result is going to be, but you can always control the variables of, are you doing what you should be doing?
I'm definitely a victim of that. Even though I might say some things I can recognize, it's like you might be able to recognize a flaw in yourself, right? I can recognize a flaw in myself, and I can understand what the corrective action needs to be, like appreciating the journey. I can tell you right now, I'm one of those people, if I don't get first place, I'm going to be highly upset. I'm going to be angry. It's going to be a whirlwind of emotions. I'll be in the fetal position on the couch for a little bit. But after a while, I have to understand that, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Get back on the grind. It's time to go back to work, right? Things are not always going to happen in your way. So when I get back to my logical way of thinking, I get that. But for that moment in time, especially when you're doing it at a high level, it's hard to, and you're competitive, it's hard to not be upset, right? Because it's not like it's a subjective sport, right? It's not like it's something where there's hard, fast rules, right? It's just, so sometimes it's very hard to differentiate success. Because like when I played basketball, when I was a number 2 guard, when I did my little crossover, pulled back and hit the 3, that went in. I know it's a 3. We're putting that on the score sheet, right? But it's like bodybuilding is different, right? So it's like maybe you did win. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of times in bodybuilding in general, pro level, whatever, that the best person really didn't win. Maybe they got overlooked. Maybe for whatever reason. I don't really necessarily believe in politics, but that's a whole different conversation. But sometimes they don't win, and that's devastating for that person, right? So, and like for people who put everything into prep sometimes, like they might put their last dollar into prep. They might, pretty much lose a relationship over prep. Like we don't talk about that side of bodybuilding, right? And it's like, oh, you did second place, but you did second place though. It's like, yeah, but it goes back to what I was saying, the opportunity cost for getting to the stage, right? So it's you really have to have a sense of mental and emotional maturity to do this sport and to be successful,
Yeah. And I think too, for a lot of new competitors, having someone around to be realistic with them and say, hey, you're probably not going to win this time. And then that helps sets the expectations too.
1,000%. I agree 1,000%. But it's hard for new coaches. It was hard for me to be brutally honest, especially you have this little teeny cute, bikini competitor, and like you see her trying so hard, but it's like you're there, but you're not there yet. So but now it's just a matter of communicating. Professionally, I'm a project manager, and I did distribution in the past. I made it to a supply chain director, and I had a lot of people reporting to me. Project management, you don't have anybody reporting to you, but you still have to hold them accountable to getting project deadlines. So that means you have to be a great communicator and orator, because I'm going to get you to do something. I'm not your boss, but I got to hold you accountable to something. So you could tell me to kick rocks. So it's how I approach you and how I talk to you. So I became very good at doing that. So when it comes back to coaching someone in the regards of being honest with them, I know how, if I have 17 clients, I know how to talk to those 17 clients in 17 different ways, because everybody's different. So you have to know your players. You have to know how to bring the best out of them. That's coaching.
Yeah.
Any other thing is you're just a dietitian, but coaching is being able to actually coach and bring the best out of your players. So having those hard conversations, yes, they're hard, but you're saving them heartache in the future, right? And you're being upfront and honest. So even if they do get emotional to begin with and they get upset, in the long term, they're going to respect you, So
yeah. And was that something hard for you as a coach, maybe getting into it, knowing that like you have to talk to people differently than maybe you would talk to yourself even, and also knowing like I might have this certain work ethic, but not everybody's going to have that, or maybe this other person has more, and it's sometimes hard to pull that in, and knowing when to also rein someone in when they want to do too much. Like, was that something for you psychologically that you had to kind of overcome a little bit at the beginning?
Not so much, because my professional career has really, that's been a big pivotal point for my professional career, is I had to be able to communicate effectively. I have a crazy amount of orders needs to get out. I'm talking to my team of 200 people, and I have some supervisors reporting to me, GMs reporting to me, and they need answers. They need them now, right? And they're looking to me. I'm their leader. So I have to be able to disseminate information, because it's not, I always say this, I used to say this to my team, it's not good enough to be right. You have to be effective. So because of that, I really take a step back and I really analyze who I'm talking to, and having enough social awareness to be able to understand how I'm going to be able to communicate to them effectively where they're receptive to it and they don't shut down. Because I might say something crazy to you, or not crazy, I might say something to you in a tone of voice. You're going to get defensive and shut down, not retain what I said. You don't even want to hear what I have to say. But I have to know who you are as a person. But to kind of take a step back with that, when I have a consultation with, potential clients, I'm very upfront and honest with my level of expectation. Because I'm not taking on people for the sake of taking on people. I'm taking on people who are going to fit into the culture that I'm building. And because I might not be a good fit for them, they might not be a good fit for me, right? Mm. So that's the reason why I have a consultation, to know, are they coachable? Did you play sports? Have you ever been, you're a cheerleader, you did competitive cheer. Fantastic. That's kind of giving me indication that they're coachable. Does that make sense? So that I'm doing these processes of elimination to kind of get an understanding of their background and how I have to handle them if I take them on as a client.
Right. I think a lot of coaches, or just anyone in business, especially new, would be a little bit shocked to hear like the process of elimination. But I think it's so, like, it's one of the most powerful things you can do as any business owner, is figuring out why something isn't going to work before you put it into place.
1,000%. And, you know, I have a continuous improvement background as a process engineer. So like that's literally my mainframe, is being able to identify problems and practice problem prevention, so you don't have to practice problem solving, right? And that's just the engineer in me. But with that being said, that has translated over to my coaching business and how I operate, right? Because the reason why I feel like we get along as a team, you know, is because I made sure that I'm building a culture that will get along. So when I'm bringing someone on, I'm not just thinking of my pockets per se. I'm thinking about how they're going to fit into my culture, like I said. And that has made a significant difference, because now the people that I have on my team, let's just say I'm working with a client where I walk downstairs. I'm backstage with Calum. I'll walk downstairs to see if Shelby or Jen needs help. They're helping each other, you know, or Grace, one of my clients, she flew into Florida to watch from Florida just to watch Shelby, Jen, and Calum compete. She's running around helping to see what that's the type of culture I'm trying to build, right? So I can't just build that by letting anybody into the door.
Right.
So I'm very particular on who I work with for those reasons. And I've always said this, and there's a little wiggle room in bodybuilding, but I've always said this: if my team succeeds, it's because they were successful. If my team fails, it's because I failed my team. And the reason why I say that is because that's what leadership is. It's what we learned in the Marine Corps, and that's what I've learned in life, right? So it's like, I say all that to say the approach to coaching really has to be leadership at a high level, and I think some people tend to overlook that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a great quote, you know, like taking accountability. I think there's a lot of loss of accountability just in general. There was a college football coach, can't remember who it was now, last week or the week before, they were talking about, they went into the locker room after a loss and they were like, why, they looked at somebody, look at each player, and they were like, did you cause us to lose? Making people understand that, like, it's not all your fault, but yes, like, we all had a part in this. Like, we all did something or could have done something better that led us to the result that we wanted. So I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's a whole topic that, you know, it's interesting, right? Because you see a lot of bosses, but you don't see a lot of leaders. And I didn't really know what that meant until, again, I went to the military and came out and all the things like that. But it's like our mistakes went away in body bags. So it's like we had to really have an understanding of having effective communication. And sometimes having effective communication, you can't coddle. Because, you know, it's not effective if you coddle, is it? Right? It might be short term, but will it be long term? So sometimes direct communication is effective communication. And I think that was a perfect example of, you know, that football team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like you said, it's challenging to hear in the moment. It may make you, you know, respond a certain way, at least in the beginning. When you start to hear that over and over again, I think you do start to lose that emotional attachment to what someone's saying to you and start to see more clearly the truth behind it. And that's where you have to be a good leader too, and not get emotional and not be, you know, not saying things just to say them, and actually provide value behind what you're saying too.
1,000%. Oh my God. It's such a major key. I've seen it happen. And listen, I'm not perfect, right? Sometimes I feel compelled to say things out of emotion, but I have to remember to, like, withhold and restrain. Is this going to help the person, right? Is it really necessary for me to say, you know, because I mean, you'll get a text at 4 a.m. like, hey, coach, like, I don't know if I should tie my shoes now or if I should wait, you know, until tomorrow. And it's just kind of like, bro, it's 4 a.m. Like, really? Like, you will be tested is what I'm trying to say. So it's like really having that sense of maturity to have a level of restraint guidance and mentorship.
Yeah.
You know, and that also helps build you as a coach and as a person as well. Everybody sees it as a dynamic of a leader leading, but you don't understand that cultivating and developing someone is also doing the same to you, because now you're practicing those skills to be able to use for someone else.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty cool kind of like feedback loop, right? You know, when you do something good for somebody that you know, a client, let's just say, then they do something well, and then that helps you out, and you learn from that, and they learn from you. So it's just really cool when you're doing things, when you build something that's actually like valuable, how it really is valuable to everybody, and then maybe somebody else sees that wants to be a coach, and it's like, oh, that's a great way to do it, and now all of a sudden there's more value in bodybuilding because there's better coaches and there's better athletes, and you know, all that kind of stuff that just can happen from setting an example or setting a standard like that.
Absolutely.
But looking forward into the sport of bodybuilding, I don't know how much you have thought about the future of the sport or what it looks like or anything like that, but do you see any changes or any trends maybe in the sport that, because it is becoming a little bit more popular or, you know, more mainstream or whatever you want to call it, that there's, whether that be good or bad, just trends in general?
Maybe not trends as much as I see some things that need to change drastically for us to be able to grow properly. It's like bodybuilding's a business too, right? And when you scale a business, there's certain things that you have to make sure is in place to go back to foundation. But there needs to be somebody over regulatory. There needs to be somebody over compliance. And the reason why I say that is, just real quick, back to the coaching thing, I think coaches need to start being regulated. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, with the PEDs and with everything like that and the diuretics and the dehydration, all these things are very dangerous if, you know, you don't really know what you're doing or the people you're handling, you know, and then, you know, you're putting these certain chemicals into people, into women, and changing their hormonal or makeup and all these things, right? So it's like the more popular our sport gets, the barrier to entry goes down and the saturation goes up and the education is non-existent. That's scary. So it's like, I think that you should have to register to become a coach with the NPC. Again, this is very high level. I'm not, you know, saying I have a full thought out plan, but what I can say is I feel like coaches need to be regulated. I think we should start there. And I think that you should have to go through a series of courses, maybe of, you know, what's, you know, side effects of different things or whatnot, and have literature. All these things I think need to happen, right? As far as regulating coaches. And they should have to get, like, you have to get an NPC card to become an athlete. You should have to also get a coaching pass or card to be able to coach clients, right? And two, I think that there needs to be some type of literature given out at local shows, because you want people to come into our sport, but you also want them to come in educated. Because how many times have you been at a local show and you hear like somebody's parents behind you, oh, so why did they move this person? Or why is it? They should have like a pamphlet that kind of goes over a high level of what the judges are looking for. And also, you know, they move people around, that they're, you know, they're using the person in the center as a standard and they're judging the person on the right and left of them compared to them. So it's like, I think all these things should be implemented in the future.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I've never thought about the like having some sort of informational piece at a show. Information is obviously the key. Yeah, I think there just needs to be more of it.
Yeah, we could really expand on the education piece. It's so vast, but I think, yeah, like I said, having literature at the shows over each division, what the expectations are, how they're being judged, and, you know, so they have a breakdown. And, you know, from a high level, at least somebody at their first time, they have an understanding of what's going on, right? And like, even me as a coach, I try to cut that learning curve as well. You know, we have a pamphlet that we give out as part of our onboarding process, things to know. And it kind of goes over a lot of things that you can expect while being in prep or, you know, being coached, or even have to take check-in pictures. you can't imagine the type of check-in pictures I get sometimes from new clients. Like, so but I understand that they're new and they don't know. So that's the reason why we came up with that piece of literature, and it just made me think that they should do that at shows. I honestly think that you should have to register to compete at a show in the regards that you should have to get your blood work done.
Yeah,
you should have to send it in to the promoter or whatever. They should have a doctor on staff or whatever they can outsource it to look over it. Say, this person has a good bill of health, they're healthy to compete. Because now you have these 50 and over divisions. It's kind of scary to me, right? Because we don't know where their health is at. And yeah, you could say that the onus is on them to know if they're in a good bill of health. I get that. But it's like, we want to grow. We should want to grow the sport in the right way. So it's like, what's that next step of the evolution? And I think that's what it is. If we love the sport the way that we say that we do, we should love the people that's going to be a part of it. And that's just us just taking care of the people who are going to enter our sport, right? So it's like, we have to do our due diligence as coaches, as promoters, as judges, as, anybody who's involved in this industry. Yeah. And the only reason I'm speaking about this is because I do love bodybuilding. I love everything that it's given me, and I try to give back in any way that I possibly can. And, being that I have professional experience in this, I would raise my hand to do it, to try to figure out a way, or to be the person to try to provide a type of process to implement to be able to make sure that we get this education into people's hands, So.
Yeah. Man, it was great getting to chat with you today. I really appreciate you coming in, and it was a joy. We definitely talked about quite a bit, and I look forward to putting this episode out there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
100%. And if you want to, before we head out, actually, if you want to share your social media or website or anything like that, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can just hit me up on Instagram, Larry Hill, the Chosen One, 87, and you can just DM me if you have any inquiries as far as coaching, and we'll get you taken care of.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.